We're going to start the webinar now. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are based in. Welcome to today's webinar that is called Mastering SAP Fieldglass Implementation with ASAPIO's Expert Services. My name is Mario Kirsten. I'm a partner at ASAPIO and I'm leading the Fieldglass practice within our company. What are we going to show you today, or I'm going to show you today, is first of all a little introduction, where we are and what we are doing, and then we'll go into the details of our service offerings, our core implementation services. We'll then explain them to you. We'll then go into detail into one of those services, which is a training, very specific, that would, secure your implementation success if you're going to implement Fieldglass. And then at the end, I will give you two real-world implementation benefits and the case study, just to give you some examples. And then last but not least, we will have the opportunity for some question and answers at the end. Feel free to already write your questions into the chat that you have in between, and then we will decide if we will answer them directly at this point in time, or if we are collecting them for the end of the webinar and go through that set the questions. Good. Where are we? The company ASAPIO. One of our focus topics is SAP Fieldglass, where we have many experts in our company. We are delivering Fieldglass implementations since 10 years now. So we have a growing customer base, a global customer base, where we delivered implementations in the last 10 years, which is still growing. We support the end-to-end Fieldglass implementations either on our own or supporting the SAP ecosystem, means that we are delivering the implementations either together with partners or supporting partners in terms of trainings and with our other core services that I will show you on the next slide, making them able and successful to deliver the Fieldglass implementation projects. What we also support and what we deliver is the SAP Fieldglass ERP edition. The Fieldglass ERP edition is a specific license that Fieldglass customers can subscribe to, where they get a ready-to-run integration delivered between the Fieldglass application and their S/4HANA and or ECC backend system, with pre-defined and pre-delivered processes that they only have to activate and enable, which is powered by a product that is developed by us, but delivered as an OEM product from SAP to the SAP Fieldglass clients. Showing a bit of a history, where we are coming from. I said, so working in the Fieldglass area for 10 years now. We got the first contact into Fieldglass at the conference Ariba Live 10 years ago, where we started then cooperating with Fieldglass together, working on the first implementation and the first customer that went live in the year of 2016, which was a very complex enterprise customer from the mining industry. So that was our first success, and from then we had several more customers and developed also then the integration add-on as a product in between, and have that product now since 5 years as that OEM software available, what I mentioned on the prior slide already. So in those 5 years, we delivered to 150 customers in 30 countries all over the globe, and as I said, still growing and expanding. Good. But coming to the main purpose of that webinar today, which are our expert services, or how we call it here, our core implementation services. We are separating our service offerings in four pillars that I want to present you here on that slide. And going from the left to the right, we separated from our, say, consulting services to integration services, trainings, and advisory services. So what does it mean from the left to the right? So consulting services, what we offer and what we support is we can do the end-to-end SAP Fieldglass implementation for a customer by ourselves. So if customers subscribe to Fieldglass, looking for a partner doing the implementation for them, we can do this from the handover from sales to scoping and solutioning, up to, let's say, go live and hand over to the operational support team or the program management office. But we can also offer only just parts of it, where we are then supporting either the customer itself doing the implementation or another partner, where we can jump in with our experts in designing the solution, designing, let's say, the best practice approaches in the Fieldglass processes. We can take over just some implementation pieces in our consulting services for Fieldglass. Or what we also do very often is where we have customers that have went live with Fieldglass successfully, and they now want to expand their businesses into new entities, into new countries, where we are then doing the rollouts of a live Fieldglass system to further countries or businesses for that customer, which is more or less also kind of a new implementation, because typically we have to take care of new processes, deviations, country requirements, and so on. Then we offer our integration services, which is more or less our roots where we are coming from, which definitely starts with the deployment, enablement, activation of the Fieldglass ERP add-on, so the ERP edition, it's called here, to enable the integration processes for the customer between the Fieldglass application and the customer's backend system. Beyond those deployment services, in terms of integration, we also deliver, we call it advanced integrations, so that are not part of the embedded deployment, not part of the, let's say, standard integrations that are required by a majority of the customers, which could be a plant maintenance scenario that needs to be integrated, or an HCM scenario integration where we have the external workers to be integrated with the HCM module of their S/4HANA or ECC system. What we also deliver in terms of integration service was especially end of last year, beginning of this year, we supported the customers with the hyperscaler migrations to move all the integrations between the backend system and the old tenant to the new tenants on the hyperscaler. And another example of our integration service is to move existing interfaces that went in the past through the SAP Event Mesh over to the cloud platform integration. Then our third pillar here for our services are trainings. The delivery bootcamp is the training where I go into detail on the next slides, but we also deliver trainings to the product, to the integration product, for partners and for customers to enable them to configure and operate that tool by themselves, to make them able to expand the integrations at a later point in time when it comes to rollouts, when it comes to expanding the business, etc., that they are aware and enabled to work in that add-on by themselves. Last but not least, we also have the category of our advisory services. Advisory service is all the services where we cluster where we don't have a hands-on, but that there are other parties like a partner or the customer itself who are responsible and on implementing Fieldglass in that example. And we then deliver with our experts, for example, quality assurance to look over the solution designs, if that makes sense, and or if we see some gaps there, doing design reviews and offer an overall delivery guidance for the partners, for the customers implementing itself. Again, so this is where we typically don't have a hands-on and doing the implementation, just from an advisory perspective to look over what is done and if there is some adjustments required. Good. Remember, we had the third pillar with the trainings from our services. I want to go into detail on one very specific training that is meant to have success with your Fieldglass implementation, and we can support you to have success with your Fieldglass implementations. And that's why we invented and worked on a training, what we called SAP Fieldglass Delivery Bootcamp. Um, that bootcamp, first of all, is designed to be a 3-day training in person, in class. It's not supposed to be a remote training because the elements, the different elements of that training are important to work together in the same room, to interact with the people and to see how fast the progress is that the people make. Um, and it's designed to get a complete overview on how to successfully deliver a Fieldglass implementation. And it starts from, I said it earlier, from a handover from sales to the implementation to the delivery team, and ends with another handover from the delivery team to the operational team, which could be a program management office, for example. And in the time from the start to the end, we will show you, let's say, the different best practices and the tools that you require to successfully deliver. We show you the various templates that you need to run through the implementation processes. We will teach you on the Activate implementation methodology, which is, of course, the preferred implementation methodology of SAP Fieldglass. Of course, there are different implementation methodologies, but the bootcamp runs based on the Activate methodology. And in that bootcamp, we explain you the different phases of Activate, and we also map the important or all the activities and all the tools and the desired outcome to the different phases of Activate. So, which means the different phases of that project, so that everybody knows at the end, okay, in phase one, I need to fill out this template, and I have to work with a customer through this process, and I have to get a sign off of this and that document before I'm able to move to the next Activate phase. So this is all part of the training, and let's say all the theoretical parts of that training to run you through all these tools and accelerators and give you the recommended references on the various SAP pages that are available for partners implementing partners, and when walk you through the theoretical stuff. But that's only 50% of that bootcamp training, because the other 50%, it was very important for us to really have a practical exercise and practical parts of that. So we will work in a training tenant together. We have training processes defined, a workbook defined, that is that every participant of that bootcamp has to work through, starting from the first activities, filling out the configuration workbook with required data, up to how do I get my tenant provisioned, how do I move the data, and how do I configure the various options and activities in the Fieldglass application, up to the point, what do I have to do when I want to go live? Good. Here are a couple more bullet points on the important topics that we will train you in those 3 days. We have a very, let's say, important topic that we work on is the role of the program management office, which is, let's say, not the first thing you would think of during an implementation or delivery project, but it's a very important thing to set up a program management office during the delivery, to have a smooth handover um, after the go live to the, let's say, to the responsible people after go live for operating the application on the one hand side, and also making sure that that the system stays up and running and gets expanded in the future. What you will also learn is what kind of resources do you need to run that implementation project, and from a target audience, we took here a couple of roles on that slide. What we see as a target audience for whom the delivery bootcamp is valuable. Just the important thing is what we don't train, what we don't show in that bootcamp is what is SAP Fieldglass and what can I do with SAP Fieldglass. So kind of a prerequisite for everybody coming into that training is they finished the learning journeys in SAP for either a contingent workforce functional consultant or a services procurement functional consultant, that they know, let's say, the baseline, the basics of SAP Fieldglass itself. Good. I will just quickly go through, and we will provide you the slide deck afterwards, is that you see how we structure the 3 days of the boot camp. Typically, in the mornings we have the theoretical sessions where we learn the new things, the templates, the accelerators, and all the processes. And in the afternoon we always have the business simulation, which is the let's say the practical exercise that starts on day 1 and is going to be finished on day 3 with a go live. Good. Just going through these agenda slides quickly for your information. What are the topics during the 3 days? Now I prepared just two small examples on, let's say, the benefits of a good Fieldglass implementation. What are the benefits at the end for the customer? And I have one example that is explicitly for the ERP edition that I mentioned, that customers can subscribe to, where we show what benefits it has to use the ERP edition, and how low the efforts can be to have a Fieldglass implementation with the ERP edition. So we have here some numbers which are, let's say, which show the value for the customer pretty good. It shows let's say, an overview or an average of the last 70 deployment projects, where of initial deployment projects for customers we've been involved in. You are aware that typically the customers are receiving a certain amount of embedded deployment services from SAP, and let's say the integration processes that and the best practice that comes with the solution are so good that 90% of those implementations had just only an additional effort for customizations or some additional consulting requirements that were between 0 and 10 days, um, typically over the whole project runtime of 26 weeks. And only 10% of them had bigger additional efforts because of complex processes, complex custom requirements that had to be built into the solution. And another example from a client from us that I found pretty shocking, to be honest, when we came to that customer was how, let's say, old school the whole timesheeting and invoice process was before we implemented Fieldglass for them. And that's not a long time ago. I think that was 2 years ago, where they still had that manual process. So on the left-hand side, I just tried to write it down. So in the past, that customer had a full manual process, more or less, where external workers sent their timesheets to the client on whatever, a paper or an Excel spreadsheet, doesn't matter. And then there were some personnel from the client that manually entered all those times in an Excel spreadsheet. So they had a template for that where they can enter the times to calculate then the different rates based on if it was standard time or overtime, what the worker worked, or if they had a monthly rate, whatever. So they entered it manually, calculate the rates, and then there were some more personnel from the client who then manually entered the service entry sheets in the SAP backend system to submit those times against the purchase order for that external worker. And once that happened, then they had to inform the supplier that the service entry sheet has been submitted based on the timesheets they've been sent. And the supplier is now good to send the invoice over that exact amount that they calculated in their Excel spreadsheet. So for me personally, it was not, I couldn't imagine that this happens still that time, but it was like it was. But after we implemented Fieldglass, we then had the customer had the benefit of a full automated timesheeting and invoicing process, because that's the benefits of Fieldglass, right? So you have the external worker can submit their times into Fieldglass, and the client only has to work into Fieldglass, checking the times, approving the times, and then the times are automatically submitted as service entry sheets against the purchase order in the customer's S/4HANA or ECC backend system without any further manual process step in between. And then they had the advantage to the fact that the times have been already checked and submitted. The supplier doesn't need to write in an additional invoice as a new document, but the invoice is then created on behalf of the supplier based on the approved times. So that's and that's just one example, right? Where Fieldglass brings so many benefits to that whole external services process, and but these are typically the things that convince the customer to go away from all these manual steps that are where they can make a lot of mistakes, or as long as there are persons involved, mistakes can happen. So every customer is of course happy of a full automated process. Good.